Okay, let's unpack something absolutely critical for businesses today. And we're going to focus specifically on the food and beverage industry.
Right. We're diving deep into a set of sources, really centered around something called the Mindful Innovator Digital Transformation Leadership Toolkit.
Exactly. This is all about navigating the really complex world of digital transformation. It's a space where F&B companies are investing heavily right now.
But facing some serious challenges, yeah.
And the core problem, highlighted in these sources, it seems despite all that money pouring in, there are surprisingly high failure rates, a lot of wasted resources. So our mission for this deep dive is to cut through that noise, find the most critical insights from this toolkit, understand why transformation is struggling, and see how this approach proposes a different path forward.
Okay, let's start with that stark reality then. The sources, they really lay it bare. Digital transformation, it's not going smoothly for everyone, despite these massive investments in F&B. Roughly 70% of these initiatives failed to deliver their expected return on investment.
70%. Wow, that number is it's hard to believe. And it's not just like a theoretical failure, is it? It translates into real money globally.
Absolutely. Across all industries, the estimate is staggering. Something like $1.3 trillion wasted annually on digital initiatives that are just poorly planned or executed.
Wow, $1.3 trillion.
Yeah. And the source points to a core issue. Leaders are essentially automating without aligning. They're chasing transformation, okay, but they're not effectively changing the underlying behavior needed for it to actually stick.
Automating without aligning. That feels like the perfect diagnosis. You can bolt on all the latest tech, but if your people, your culture, your fundamental ways of working aren't really on board.
It's like putting a jet engine on a bicycle, yeah?
Exactly. It just won't work.
It doesn't. And the consequences, they're severe. Companies are losing market share. The source cites around 12% for those struggling.
Okay.
They're eroding customer trust, estimated at 28%. That's huge.
Yeah.
And they're losing valuable employees' turnover, hitting 34%, linked directly to poorly managed change.
Wow. So it's hitting the balance sheet, customer relationships, and your own team. And on top of that, F&B companies are dealing with just immense external pressures right now, aren't they?
Oh, they really are. Supply chain volatility, for instance, surged 42% since just 2023. That makes efficient operations more critical, but also way harder.
Right.
Consumers are also demanding much more transparency. 67% expect greater visibility into, where their food comes from, how it's produced.
A better day shift.
It is. And then add internal struggles like labor shortages, often grappling with outdated legacy systems. I mean, the pressure to evolve is just immense.
So there's this intense pressure to do something digital, do it fast, but the sources seem to suggest that very rush is actually part of the problem.
Exactly right. The data shows 67% of rushed digital initiatives failed to deliver the expected value.
Over 2/3.
Yeah. And maybe most critically, 82% of failed transformations point to a lack of clear purpose. When companies rush to digitize without truly understanding the problems they're trying to solve, or, without a clear vision, they just end up with expensive solutions looking for a problem.
That cycle, building something cool and then trying to figure out what it's for that must just bleed resources.
Yeah.
Yet despite all these failures, investment in F&B digital tech is actually increasing.
It is, yeah, significantly. F&B digital investment is nearly doubling as a percentage of revenue. It went from about 2.1% in 2020 to averaging 3.8% in 2024.
Yeah.
So it shows the industry understands digital is essential for the future. They know they have to do it.
And where are they focusing those investments? Is it still all about huge infrastructure projects, big CapEx?
There's a definite shift happening. While capital investment is still there, operational expenditure, or OPEX, is growing much faster. It jumped from 20% to 35% of digital budgets.
So less buying big boxes, more subscribing to dynamic capabilities?
Exactly. It points to more spending on things like cloud services, data platforms, AI subscriptions, stuff that enables ongoing agility rather than just those one-off purchases.
Okay, makes sense. And which parts of the business are getting the most attention with these budgets?
Well, the largest share is going towards customer experience and digital commerce. That's about 35%, followed by supply chain and operations at 25%.
Yeah.
And the tech categories they're betting on most heavily. Cloud computing and data management are big at 28%, then AML at 22%, and IoT at 18%.
Makes sense. Improve how you reach and serve the customer, make your internal engine run smoother, all powered by data and smart tech. But the sources really hammer home that successful transformation isn't just about the tech itself, right?
That's the absolutely critical piece here, and you can really see it in the results. Companies investing above that industry average, so over 3.8% of revenue.
Yeah.
They aren't just spending more, they seem to be investing smarter, often in people and process alongside the tech. And get this, for every dollar invested, these top performers see about a $3.20 return.
Wow, $3.20 back for every dollar.
Yeah, versus others who might see minimal gain or even a loss.
A return over triple the investment. I mean, that's the difference between really thriving and just, treading water.
It really is. And these leaders, the ones investing more effectively, they report outcomes like 42% higher customer satisfaction,
Impressive.
by 38% better operational efficiency, and a remarkable 27% better employee retention.
That retention number is interesting, too.
It really reinforces the idea that the ROI comes from the transformation, the whole picture, not just buying the technology.
So it sounds like they see digital investment not just as an IT cost, but as a fundamental driver of growth for the whole business.
Precisely. Companies achieving that significant 3.2x ROI, they frame digital transformation as a growth engine right from the start, not a cost center to be minimized.
Right.
And the sources warn that underinvestment or ineffective investment leads to this widening gap with competitors. You could be losing over 5% market share annually if you fall behind.
That gap really highlights the urgency and a massive part of that growth engine, especially in F&B retail. It's got to be the digital consumer. How has the modern shopper changed the game?
Oh, they've fundamentally changed expectations. They demand seamless, frictionless experiences, whether they're online, on their phone, or walking into a physical store. Their behavior is mobile-first, digitally influenced.
Yeah.
Omnichannel isn't even really a strategy anymore. It's just how people shop now.
Omnichannel is the baseline. Do the sources give us any insight into just how pervasive that is?
They do. A huge 93% of consumers now purchase F&B across both digital and brick-and-mortar channels.
93%.
Yeah, and consider this. 1 in 5 consumers make the majority of their F&B purchases digitally now.
1 in 5.
Yeah.
Already.
And on top of that, global mobile commerce shopping on phones accounts for nearly 60% of all retail e-commerce sales.
60% of online retail is happening on phones. Wow. So if your mobile experience isn't top-notch, you're basically missing the majority of the action online.
It dictates everything for retailers now. You absolutely must optimize for mobile. You need to integrate your channels so a customer can, say, start an order online and pick it up in store without any friction.
Seamless, right?
You need rich digital product information because customers are researching on their phones while they're standing in your aisles.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Exactly. And you need to leverage data analytics, not just to report sales, but to personalize offers, maybe even predict behavior. The whole landscape demands mobility, connectivity, and data-driven decisions at every single touch point.
And this isn't just about the website or the app, is it? The sources make a pretty compelling case that technology is now essential inside the physical store, too.
It's really no longer optional. It's foundational to what customers expect. Look at these numbers the sources pull out.
Yeah.
71% of consumers expect store associates to have mobile devices to help them.
Oh, yeah.
75% have scanned QR codes for product info. Over half use their smartphones in the store for shopping or research. Nearly half demand mobile checkout options. And 62% of Gen Z specifically prefer self-checkout.
Okay, so customers expect staff to have tech. They expect to use their own tech in the store. They want fast mobile checkout and self-service options. I mean, these aren't future trends. This is right now.
Exactly. The sources list examples like mobile POS devices for associates, interactive QR codes on shelves, self-checkout kiosks, dynamic digital signage. Integrating technology into the physical space is just essential to meeting today's shopper expectations.
Okay, so we've got this huge challenge. Massive investment, high failure rates, immense pressure, rapidly changing consumer behavior. And the core problem seems to be this automating without aligning, this lack of clear purpose. The sources then introduce the idea that overcoming this requires a fundamentally different mindset.
It really does. It's not just about buying new tech, but about how the organization thinks and acts. The sources highlight this need for companies to maintain a beginner's mindset.
A beginner's mindset. That's interesting. What does that mean in practice?
It means constantly questioning assumptions, being patient, and deliberately building change step by step rather than just trying to flip a switch and expect everything to work. It implies humility, a willingness to learn even if you've been in the business for decades.
Okay, humility and learning. How does that translate into action? Is there an example?
Yeah, there's a great illustration from the sources, a case study from a company called Nextly. It's aptly titled Predicting Behavior, Not Just Reporting It.
Okay, predicting, not just reporting. Tell us about that. What did they do differently?
Well, instead of just building dashboards that show you what already happened, reporting data, they focused on using their existing data for real-time predictive intelligence. Their approach uses what they call predictive microsegmentation. They look at really granular behavioral signals, 6U trends, life cycle triggers, all to anticipate future actions.
So moving beyond what did the customer buy yesterday to something like what is this customer likely to do tomorrow or next week?
Exactly that. They shared a simple example involving a customer named Emily. Emily typically ordered a specific type of milk, say, every 20 days.
Okay.
On day 26, she hadn't placed her usual order. Now, a standard dashboard might not flag this immediately, or it just reports overall sales are down, maybe session counts are lower. Nothing actionable, really.
Yeah, it's lagging information. So the aha moment was?
It was predictive. On day 14, before she even reached her usual 20-day cycle, their model predicted she was likely to order again in about 6 days.
Okay, so it saw the pattern and predicted the next likely event.
Right, and this prediction triggered a personalized message, designed specifically to re-engage her before she potentially churned or maybe bought elsewhere. Emily got the message and she placed her order.
That's incredibly powerful, intervening proactively based on anticipating future behavior, not just reacting to past events. That's a game changer. And the results from this predictive approach.
And this is key. Without any major system overhaul, just by using their existing data more intelligently and proactively, they saw significant impact in just 3 months for similar customer segments. Repeat rate was up 32%.
Wow.
CRM engagement, like opening emails or clicking links, up 45%. And average cart size increased by 18%.
Huge gains. Just from smarter data use, not necessarily acquiring more data or bigger, fancier systems. I love that quote from their VP of Growth in the case study.
Which one?
We didn't need more tech. We needed a smarter way to use what we had.
Yes. That quote perfectly captures the core insight here. Winners in digital transformation aren't necessarily the ones just collating the most data. They're the ones who know how to act on it in real time.
Yeah.
Transformation is often about unlocking the value that's already there, in your organization, in your data, and knowing how to use it strategically. The sources call this data that decides.
Data that decides. I like that. It's about the action the data enables, not just the data itself.
Yeah.
So, okay, if this is the challenge and that's the mindset shift needed, how does the Mindful Innovator Toolkit actually help companies put all this into practice?
Well, the toolkit is presented as that guide, right?
Yeah.
A practical way to bridge that gap between the challenge and the desired outcomes, those better results we talked about. It emphasizes a really fundamental principle.
Which is?
Digital transformation isn't a one-off project, it's an ongoing practice.
A practice. Interesting. Like something you refine, you repeat, you build skill in over time, like practicing an instrument.
Precisely. It requires leading differently, yes, but also building systems and processes that are sustainable, that stick, and that drive measurable outcomes that endure. The toolkit provides a structured approach through things like strategic conversation guides, frameworks for mindful transformation, and practical execution and measurement tools.
Okay, let's maybe look at some of the key areas it helps with. Starting right seems crucial, especially given that automating without aligning problem we discussed.
Absolutely critical. The source really emphasizes that digital transformation isn't just some strategy document that sits on a shelf. It needs to be a shared story, understood and owned by everyone, from the executive suite right down to the frontline staff. It succeeds because open, structured conversations build that clarity, the trust, and a sense of shared ownership across the entire organization.
So actively talking through the change process, having those conversations, is basically non-negotiable for success.
More than that, the source suggests it's the very engine of alignment. The toolkit actually provides these neat one-page conversation guides, and they're tailored for specific, crucial audiences. Your key stakeholders or executives.
For buy-in, presumably.
Exactly. Then your own team for engagement. Leaders in other departments for collaboration. Crucially, your customers to understand their real experience. And your frontline staff for those grounded, real-world insights.
Getting insights directly from customers and frontline staff must be incredibly valuable, often overlooked. What kind of questions do those guides prompt? Can you give an example?
Sure. Your customer's guide, for instance, has thought starters like what brought you in today or what was confusing or frustrating about the experience. How do you use your phone when you're shopping for these products? Or even, have you ever left without buying something because of the experience? And if so, why?
Very direct, practical questions.
Yeah, and it also suggests hands-on activities, like actually doing a follow-the-journey field study yourself, or conducting quick cart check intercept interviews in the store, or performing a click-to-curb experience audit for online orders.
Those are very practical ways to get outside the boardroom and into the reality of the customer experience. And the toolkit links this whole conversation process to building what it calls collaborative alignment.
Yes, and the point is, alignment isn't passive agreement. It's built through active communication, through feedback loops, and through clarifying that shared purpose. The toolkit offers a communication plan framework built around 5 essential questions. These force you to think strategically about how you'll actually communicate the transformation. Things like, who are we talking to? What do they really need to hear from their perspective? Where and how will we deliver that message effectively? Strategy sessions, team huddles, newsletters. Crucially, how will we make sure this is a two-way conversation? How do we get feedback?
That two-way part seems key.
It is. And finally, who specifically owns each piece of this communication plan? Making it accountable.
That framework brings some needed structure to something that can feel really overwhelming communicating change. And there's a powerful reminder in the sources about the consequence of not communicating effectively. Right.
There is, and it's a speak one. If people don't know what's happening, they'll fill in the blanks usually with fear.
Oof.
Clear, consistent, two-way communication combats that fear and builds the trust you absolutely need for change to take root.
Fear definitely kills transformation. Okay, so you start by having the right conversations, planning how you'll communicate. What's the next logical step the toolkit guides you through?
Assessing where you are right now. That's key. You can't plot a course if you don't know your starting point. The toolkit includes something called the Mindful Transformation Assessment.
Okay, an assessment, what does it measure?
It's basically a diagnostic tool. It's designed to give you an honest snapshot of your organization's current state across 4 core principles that the source identifies as defining mindful, successful innovation.
And what are those 4 principles you're assessing against?
Okay, first is understanding depth. Are you really digging in to do the research, map your processes, observe things firsthand, document insights?
Got it.
Second, collaborative alignment. How well do teams actually work together across functions? Do you involve stakeholders effectively? Do you have shared goals? Is there good interdepartment communication?
Right, the alignment piece again.
Third is test and learn capability as experimentation part of your DNA. Do you run pilots? Use feedback loops effectively? Crucially, do you learn from failures? How efficient is your testing process?
Okay, the ability to try things out safely.
Exactly. And finally, measurement maturity. Are you effectively using metrics, the right metrics, to define success, drive decisions, track real outcomes, and review progress? Or are you just measuring activity?
So it's a structured way to look at your organization's capabilities in those really critical areas for transformation.
Precisely. You assess where you stand on each, and the toolkit provides a simple scoring guide ranging from beginning up to leader to help you see your strengths, but also, importantly, identify your specific gaps. And it's designed to feed directly into an action planning template.
Makes sense. And is this assessment something you do alone, or is it better as a team exercise?
The toolkit strongly recommends doing it as part of a team workshop. The Mindful Transformation workshop structure it lays out is designed to help teams collectively uncover blind spots, challenge hidden assumptions, and build that shared understanding that you just can't get from individual work alone. Transformation is a team sport, right?
It really is. So the process is something like do some prep individually, maybe take the assessment, and then come together as a team.
Yes, that's the flow. Phase 1 is individual preparation. Phase 2 is the core team alignment workshop. That's where you share your assessment scores, but importantly, you discuss why different people maybe scored things differently.
The differences.
That discussion of variances, the source says, is often where the most valuable insights emerge, because it highlights different perspectives or misunderstandings. Then you explore the gaps you've identified collectively and begin concrete action planning based on that shared understanding.
Discussing why scores differ, that seems like it would get right to the heart of different perspectives and assumptions that could easily derail alignment later if you didn't surface them.
It absolutely does. And phase 3 is the crucial follow-through. Scheduling regular, say, 30, 60, 90-day check-ins to review progress on the action plans and ensure the momentum isn't lost.
To keep the ball rolling.
Exactly. The sources also provide tips on facilitating these workshops, effectively creating psychological safety, documenting decisions, and also flags common challenges to anticipate, like disagreements on scores, resistance to change, feeling overwhelmed, or just inaction afterwards.
Okay, so once you've assessed where you are, had those discussions as a team, you likely have a whole bunch of ideas or areas you could focus on. Prioritizing must be absolutely essential then.
Absolutely essential. Otherwise, you risk trying to do everything and achieving nothing. That's where the prioritization matrix comes in. It's a simple but really effective visual tool.
Okay.
It helps teams cut through the noise and focus their strategic efforts. You basically map potential ideas or initiatives based on two dimensions: their perceived effort level versus their potential impact level.
Okay, the classic impact effort matrix, plotting ideas on a simple 4-box chart.
Yes, exactly that. The sweet spot, obviously, is the quadrant for low-effort, high-impact ideas.
Quick wins.
The sources call them quick wins, yeah. And the matrix helps teams identify and agree on tackling these first. But it also helps categorize the other ideas: high effort, high impact, major projects; low effort, low impact, maybe fill-ins; high effort, low impact, things to question or avoid. It brings clarity.
Those quick wins sound like a great way to build momentum and demonstrate progress early on, build some confidence. How do you then turn those prioritized ideas into actual tangible action, not just dots on a chart?
Good question. That's addressed by what the toolkit calls the from priority to plan process. For each key priority you've identified, especially those quick wins or major projects, teams break it down into the single first next step they will take in the next 30 days. Not the whole plan, just the very next concrete action.
Okay, just the immediate next step.
Then they assign a specific owner for that step. They list who else needs to be involved or informed. They identify any required support or resources. And they clearly define what success looks like for that specific 30-day step.
That's smart. It takes a potentially big abstract priority and makes it super concrete, accountable, and achievable in the very near term. It prevents paralysis.
Exactly. It creates a clear, actionable plan, step by step, that prevents things from just staying as ideas on a matrix. It forces action.
We touched on test and learn as one of those assessment principles earlier. How does the toolkit guide organizations in actually building that capability? Because that feels crucial, but maybe hard to implement culturally.
It is crucial. The toolkit highlights that a structured test and learn strategy is fundamental to successful digital transformation, especially given those high failure rates we talked about. It's how you reduce risk, how you validate your assumptions before you bet the farm, and ensure you're building solutions that actually work for your customers and your business before you roll them out widely.
Okay, so what are the core steps involved in doing that kind of strategic testing effectively?
The sources outline a pretty clear cyclical process. First, establish objectives and clear hypotheses. What specific problem are you trying to solve with this test, and what do you predict will happen? Be specific.
Okay.
Second, design controlled experiments, set up your test properly, think about variables, maybe have a control group if possible, define how you'll measure.
Right.
Third, implement and monitor, run the test, often as a limited pilot program, and track the results in real time. Collect the data. And fourth, analyze results and evaluate what actually happened versus your hypothesis, figure out what you learned even if it failed, and then refine your approach based on that data for the next cycle or a wider rollout.
It's essentially applying the scientific method to your business transformation efforts, isn't it?
That's a great way to put it. Exactly. The sources also provide some best-in-class tips for making this work culturally. Things like actively fostering a culture where experimentation is encouraged, not punished if things don't work out as planned.
Psychological safety again?
Yes, using a structured framework like the one we just discussed, prioritizing which ideas to test first, maybe using that impact effort matrix again, and allocating resources smartly. They even suggest a 70-30 rule for resource allocation.
70-30?
Yeah, like dedicating maybe 70% of resources to scaling proven strategies that already work, but carving out 30% specifically for testing more innovative, potentially riskier experiments.
That 70-30 split makes a lot of sense. Innovate, push the boundaries, but without putting the whole core business at risk on unproven ideas. And there's a classic quote that fits perfectly here, isn't there?
There is. The only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing, attributed to Henry Ford. And the toolkit includes practical exercises to support this, like structured hypothesis development workshops and post-test review sessions designed specifically to ensure that learning actually happens and gets shared.
Learning from failures, big or small, seems absolutely key to that beginner's mindset you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, so finally, how do you know if any of this structured effort, these conversations, assessments, prioritized plans, tests, is actually driving progress? We get to measurement.
Measurement, yes, absolutely non-negotiable. The core principle stated very clearly in the sources is digital transformation without measurement is just activity. It's not progress.
Just busy work.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And they explicitly note that many organizations fall into the trap of measuring everything and, as a result, end up learning nothing meaningful.
Data overload leading to insight starvation. Heard that one before.
Precisely. So the goal isn't to track 100 different metrics. It's to focus intensely on a few critical ones that truly reflect business impact and help align efforts across different teams.
Okay, focus is key. What are the tips for doing that well?
The best-in-class tips for measurement include things like tying your key performance indicators, KPIs, directly back to your strategic outcomes. Why are we doing this transformation in the first place? Limiting yourself to a small number of core KPIs, the sources suggest maybe 5 to 7 that truly move the business. Avoid that KPI sprawl.
Keep it tight.
Ensure everyone, from the top leadership down to the frontline teams, understands how their daily work actually impacts those core KPIs. That's what they call line of sight. And make it visible. Use dashboards, scorecards, regular communication to keep those key metrics front and center for everyone.
You can't manage what you don't measure. The famous Peter Drucker quote. That applies universally here. What about the rhythm of checking those metrics? How often?
Cadence matters a lot. Consistent measurement builds momentum, keeps focus, and critically helps you spot trends or problems early before they become huge issues. The sources suggest different rhythms for different types of metrics make sense.
Like what?
Operational KPIs, things like order accuracy, website uptime, maybe daily store traffic. Those might need to be tracked daily or weekly. Strategic KPIs like customer lifetime value, market share growth, maybe employee retention related to the change, those are typically reviewed monthly. Cultural indicators like employee engagement scores or feedback specifically about the transformation could be monthly or quarterly. And experiment results are naturally reviewed per test cycle.
Okay, so match the measurement frequency to the nature and speed of the metric. And this also links back to those feedback loops and check-ins we discussed earlier in the planning phase.
Absolutely. Those weekly check-ins, monthly strategic reviews, quarterly resets, these cadences become the natural rhythm for discussing the data shown by the KPIs and deciding collectively on the next steps or adjustments. There's another powerful quote the sources use to reinforce this.
Let's hear it.
"In God we trust, all others must bring data," attributed to W. Edwards Deming.
Huh, love that one. Data is the language of progress in business. But again, the key is focused data, not just any data.
Exactly. The emphasis throughout the section is measure only what matters. Less is absolutely more here. It brings clarity, it improves accountability because everyone knows what the key goals are. It sharpens decision-making by highlighting what's truly important. And ultimately, it drives better performance because effort is focused.
Can you give us a concrete example, maybe, of transforming a generic metric into one that really matters and drives action in the way the toolkit suggests?
Sure. It's really about shifting from measuring activity to measuring insight or outcome. So instead of reporting something vague like, we had 1.2 million app sessions this quarter.
Which sounds impressive, but doesn't tell you much.
Right. It just tells you about activity. A transformation-focused KPI using that same app data might be something like 57% of our active app users placed a second order within 14 days of their first, and that percentage is up 9% from last quarter.
Ah, okay. That's a huge difference. The second one tells you something meaningful about user behavior, about stickiness, about the actual business impact and growth potential. And it prompts action. How do we get that 57% higher? Or why did it go up 9%?
Exactly.
Right.
One is kind of a vanity metric. The other points directly to business impact and guides decisions. There's a quote from Hans Hofmann used here. "The ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak."
Let the important stuff shine through.
Precisely. And the toolkit provides specific tools to help with this, like a KPI logic map, sometimes called an impact tree, to connect actions to outcomes, a KPI selection worksheet, and a KPI tracker template to help teams choose and consistently focus on the right metrics.
Okay, so drawing this all together then, we know F&B companies are investing heavily in the technology areas like cloud, AML, IoT, because the sources show that's necessary just to keep up with consumer demands and operational pressures.
Right. Those technologies are the what of digital transformation. They're the tools you're implementing, the capabilities you're building.
And the Mindful Innovator Toolkit, based on this deep dive, really provides the how and maybe even the why. It gives you a structured framework to adopt those technologies successfully.
Ensuring they are aligned with a clear purpose, with your people, with your processes, rather than just being expensive purchases that don't deliver.
It shifts the focus from technology as the end goal to transformation as the goal, with technology being just one, albeit important, enabler.
Well put. That's exactly the shift in perspective it advocates for.
This has been a really comprehensive look, I think. We've covered the challenges and a very structured, people-centric approach to digital transformation, specifically for food and beverage. For you listening, whether you're directly involved in transformation efforts yourself, maybe just trying to understand the trends in the industry, or perhaps trying to figure out how companies can avoid contributing to that staggering $1.3 trillion wasted annually. This provides a really practical way to think about it.
Yeah, hopefully it offers some useful language, some assessment tools, frameworks for those crucial conversations and planning stages, and specific guidance on how to approach testing and measurement more effectively. It really zeroes in on the critical people, process, data, and mindset shifts required for digital change that actually sticks and delivers real results.
So to wrap up our key insights, digital transformation in F&B, while essential, faces high failure rates, largely because organizations, well, they automate before they align, and often lack that clear, shared purpose. Success comes not just from deploying the technology, but from fundamentally changing behavior, adopting a structured, mindful practice of transformation, engaging in those frank conversations across the board, acting intelligently on your data, diligently testing and learning, and focusing your measurement only on what truly drives outcomes for the business.
And maybe the central message distilled from this toolkit approach is profound in its simplicity. Sometimes the fastest way to achieve successful transformation is actually to slow down first, to align before you automate.
Align before you automate. That's a really powerful takeaway. And here's something to leave you thinking about, drawing directly from the insights in these sources we've unpacked today. We saw evidence that top digital leaders invest significantly more, about 2.5 times more, apparently, in their people. Things like employee experience, training, change management, compared to companies lagging behind.
Right, that people investment piece was striking.
So the final thought for you is, what does that difference in investment tell you about where the real power, the real leverage of digital transformation truly lies?